I'm not the type to believe in ghosts or cursed places or any of that paranormal crap. That's why I didn't think twice when my buddy Miles suggested we do a weekend camping trip near Lake Darnell. It's this big, half-forgotten lake tucked deep in the woods a few hours outside Portland. No cell service for miles, no trail markers past the gate, and according to a Reddit thread Miles found, a handful of sketchy stories over the years about people going missing or hearing voices at night. He thought it was hilarious, said it would make for a great horror movie vibe, and I agreed. We were in our 20s, bored, and all a little burned out. A couple days in the woods with no screens sounded like heaven. There were 5 of us: me, Miles, his girlfriend Lily, our friend Dan, and Bree, a girl I barely knew but who tagged along last minute because she was staying with Dan for the week. We took 2 cars and parked at this rustic gate at the end of a barely used dirt road. From there it was a hike down through old-growth forest to the lake, which took maybe 2 hours with gear. No signs, no other hikers, just us, trees, and the faint sound of running water somewhere in the distance. The place was weirdly beautiful, quiet in that thick, almost suffocating way. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. We set up camp at a little inlet on the east side of the lake. There was an old, half-collapsed dock nearby and a fire pit someone else had built long ago. I remember Lily pointing out how there were no birds. I hadn't noticed until then. It was true, no calls, no rustling. Just the wind moving through the trees like distant whispering. That first night was normal. We drank, played cards, cooked on the fire. Miles kept making dumb jokes about the lake spirits, and Bree told a story about some cousins of hers who once camped near here and woke up to find their tent zipped open and all their gear rearranged. She said they packed up and left at sunrise, freaked out but unharmed. We all laughed, but I noticed Dan didn't say much after that. He kept glancing out at the water. Around midnight, I went off to piss and caught him sitting alone on the old dock, staring across the lake. When I asked if he was good, he nodded slowly and said, "Just feels familiar, somehow." I remember thinking that was a weird thing to say, but I didn't push it. He'd smoked earlier and probably just needed some air. The next morning, Dan was gone. We woke up to find his tent unzipped, boots missing, and no sign of him anywhere. At first, we thought he went to find a good spot to fish or maybe took a morning walk. But hours passed. Miles and I hiked a good distance in both directions around the lake, calling his name. No footprints, no response. His phone, wallet, and backpack were still in his tent. The woods were too quiet. By late afternoon, panic set in. Lily wanted to hike back to the cars and get help, but the sun was already sinking. We figured it was safer to wait one more night, just in case he came back. Bree barely said a word. She just sat by the fire, hugging her knees, like she was trying to disappear into herself. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to whispering. At first, I thought it was the wind again, but it was too deliberate. Actual words, just outside my tent. When I unzipped the flap and looked out, everything was still until I saw someone standing near the fire pit. It was Dan. He was just standing there, barefoot, wearing only a soaked t-shirt and his jeans, like he'd walked out of the lake. I called his name, and he turned slowly, like it took effort. His face was blank. No emotion, no recognition. Just pale, wet skin, and wide, staring eyes. Everyone woke up when I shouted. Lily gasped. Bree immediately got behind Miles. We all ran to him, but something felt off. He didn't respond to questions. Wouldn't look anyone in the eye. He just stood there, arms limp at his sides, shivering even though it wasn't that cold. Miles grabbed a towel from his pack and wrapped it around him. He kept saying, "Dude, what the hell happened to you?" But Dan didn't answer. Eventually, we got him to sit by the fire. He stared into it like he'd never seen fire before. He didn't sleep that night. None of us did. The next morning, he seemed better. Alert, even. He apologized for getting turned around and said he must have fallen and hit his head. Claimed he remembered slipping near the lake, but not much after that. Something about the way he said it, rehearsed, almost made me uneasy. It was too tidy, too clean. Dan wasn't that articulate even on a good day. Bree kept avoiding him. At one point, I saw her watching him from behind a tree, her face pale like she'd seen something she couldn't make sense of. We left that morning, packed everything in silence, and started the hike out. Dan walked with us, but lagged behind. Every now and then I'd catch him looking back toward the lake, lips moving like he was whispering to himself. Back at the cars, we finally hit signal. Lily called her brother, who's a cop, and told him everything. He said if Dan was found safe and uninjured, it wasn't technically a missing person case anymore. Still, he encouraged her to file a report. Dan refused, said it was embarrassing and unnecessary. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something didn't feel resolved. I kept replaying the moment I saw Dan by the fire, dripping wet and slack-jawed. I couldn't shake it. The next day, Bree called me. She sounded shaken. Said she didn't know who else to talk to. She told me she'd woken up to pee the night Dan disappeared and saw him walking into the lake. She thought maybe he was just being weird or drunk, but she watched him go in deeper and deeper until he was completely underwater. She waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. He never came back up. She was too scared to tell us then, she said. Thought maybe she imagined it. But when she saw him again the next night, something inside her knew that wasn't the same Dan. I didn't believe her. Not really. Until she texted me a photo. It was a screenshot from her phone, taken just after Dan disappeared, when she was trying to get signal near the ridge. In the background, barely visible past the trees, was a figure standing in the water, head just above the surface, staring directly at the camera. The problem was the timestamp on that photo was 10:32 a.m., a full hour after Dan had already disappeared, and he was still standing in the lake. So who or what hiked back into camp that night? I haven't spoken to Dan since. None of us have. Lily and Miles broke up. Bree moved to Arizona. I tried to look up stories about that lake, tried to find any official missing persons or drownings near there, but nothing. Just a few Reddit threads, and one blurry photo I can't stop staring at. It's the lake. You can just barely see a figure standing on the far side, watching. Story 2. I've hiked into Willamette National Forest since I was 12. My dad used to take me out there with his buddies. We'd fish, camp, sometimes hunt. It's the kind of place that's just remote enough to feel wild, but still mapped and managed by the state. I know it like the back of my hand. That's why what happened to me and Natalie last September still keeps me up at night. We've been dating for a little over a year, and this was our 3rd trip out together. She loved the outdoors, but wasn't as familiar with the forest as I was. I picked a 3-day loop trail I'd done with my dad years ago, nothing too crazy. We parked at the Pine Hollow trailhead and planned to hike the ridge, make camp near Crooked Creek, then circle back through the southern pass. It was perfect weather. Cold mornings, clear skies, no one else around. We didn't see a single other hiker the whole first day. That night by the creek, we heard coyotes in the distance and owls up in the canopy. It was quiet, sure, but the good kind. Peaceful. I remember Natalie saying she wanted to stay out longer next time, maybe do a full week, deeper in. The second morning, we broke camp early. We were about halfway through the loop, just past the southern ridge line, when I noticed something odd. A trail I didn't recognize. It branched off the main loop at an angle, half concealed by brush, but it was clearly a trail packed dirt, broken undergrowth, even some boot prints. But here's the thing. It wasn't on the map. Not my old paper topo, not the digital one on my GPS app. I stood there staring at it for a solid minute, confused. I know this part of the forest. There's never been a spur trail here. Natalie spotted a little wooden sign nailed to a tree near the fork. It just said Stillwater, with an arrow pointing down the mystery path. She smiled and said, creepy name. Sounds like a murder documentary. I laughed, but I felt something tighten in my gut. I should have said no. I should have stuck to the plan. But the trail looked fresh, like it had been cleared recently, and Natalie was curious. We figured maybe it was a new backcountry spur, something not officially listed yet. So we followed it. The trail wound downhill through thicker woods. After 20 minutes, the air changed, got cooler, damper, heavier somehow. We stopped talking. Not on purpose. It just felt wrong to break the silence. Then we saw the cabin. It was tucked in a clearing, half covered in moss. No lights, no smoke, no sounds. Just a small, one-room structure with gray wood, no door, and a collapsed chimney. There were symbols carved into the beams around the doorway. Not graffiti, more like runes. Circles, arrows, loops, some kind of pattern. Natalie stepped inside first. I followed. The inside was empty except for a rotting chair, a shattered window, and more carvings on the walls. A strange smell lingered, not quite decay, not quite mold. Something sweet, almost metallic. It made my eyes water. There was no dust, no spider webs, like someone had just cleaned the place out. Then I noticed there were no bugs, no birds outside, no wind. The woods had gone dead silent. Natalie whispered, "I think we should go." And I nodded. We turned around and walked straight back the way we came. Only, the trail wasn't there. I swear to God, We walked no more than 20 yards from the cabin, and the trail behind us had vanished. Just thick trees. No packed dirt. No broken brush. Just untouched forest in every direction. I thought maybe we got turned around. Maybe we panicked. I walked back to the cabin. Tried again, this time using my GPS. The signal was weak, glitchy. The map showed our last known location as the main loop trail, half a mile north. But we hadn't gone that far. Natalie started to cry. I tried to calm her, said we just bushwhacked back toward the ridge, rejoined the main trail. But every direction we walked, we ended up looping back to the same clearing. Like the woods were folding in on themselves. We marked trees with my knife. Carved arrows. Still came back. The third time we passed the same mossy rock near the cabin, Natalie stopped and whispered, "I don't think we're supposed to leave." We stayed the night in the cabin. I didn't sleep. I sat in the doorway with my knife out, watching the woods. Once, around 3 a.m., I thought I saw someone standing in the trees. Just watching. I called out. Nothing. But I could feel them out there. Not animals. Not people. Something else. The next morning, Natalie was gone. I searched the clearing, screamed her name, circled the cabin over and over. Nothing. Her pack was still inside. Her boots. Like she just stepped outside and vanished. I found her the next night. Or, I found someone. She came back just after sunset, walking out of the trees barefoot, skin pale, eyes dull. She looked at me and said, "It's okay now. I found the trail." But something was wrong with her voice. Too flat. Like she was repeating someone else's words. I asked her where she went, what happened. She just smiled. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat cross-legged in the corner of the cabin, staring at the wall. Around midnight, she started humming. A tune I didn't recognize. I asked her to stop. She just kept going. I knew I had to leave. I woke up early and packed what I could. Natalie didn't react. She just sat there, still humming. I told her I was going to find help. She said, "I'll be here," but didn't look at me. I didn't even make it 10 minutes into the woods before I saw the trail again. The real trail. The actual one, packed and familiar. I ran, heart pounding, lungs burning. I didn't look back. Just ran until I hit the main loop. My GPS synced. Signal returned. I kept running. I flagged down a ranger at the trailhead. Told him everything. He looked confused. Said there's no spur trail off the South Ridge. No Stillwater sign. No cabin. They sent out a search team. Helicopters. Dogs. Nothing. Natalie's still missing. At least, that's what I tell people. But I know exactly where she is. And some nights, I check the trail maps, just to be sure. Every time, it's not there. No fork. No turnoff. Just the main loop. But sometimes, when I'm driving past the forest late at night, I swear I see a sign nailed to a tree just past the tree line. Faded wood. Faint letters. Stillwater. Story 3. My brother Connor and I used to do a backpacking trip every fall, just the two of us. It started after our dad died. We figured we'd honor the tradition, one good hike a year. No phones, no distractions, just wilderness. Last October was supposed to be our 6th trip. We planned a 4-day loop through the Sawtooth Range in Idaho. Remote, rugged, beautiful, and way off-grid. No reception past the ranger station, no other hikers this late in the season. It was exactly what we wanted. We brought the usual: packs, bear spray, emergency gear, my dad's old camping stove, and a pair of two-way radios, just in case we ever split up. They were cheap but reliable, 16-mile range. Basics can feature, nothing fancy. The first day was perfect. Crisp air, clear skies, not a soul in sight. We camped near a small alpine lake and made dinner under the stars. I remember Connor saying how quiet everything felt, like the whole world was holding its breath. The second day was when things got weird. We were hiking up a narrow pass when Connor stopped walking and raised a hand. "Did you hear that?" he asked. I didn't. Just the wind and the crunch of our boots. But he looked spooked. Said it sounded like a voice, real faint, coming from somewhere ahead. We stood still for a minute, listening. Nothing. We chalked it up to wind or echo and kept moving. That afternoon, we used the radios to split up briefly. Connor went to scout a better water source while I set up camp. About 20 minutes after he left, I heard the radio crackle. "You see this?" The voice was warped by static, but I assumed it was Connor. I pressed the button. See what? Silence. Then another burst of static. "It's behind the..." And then it cut off. I called his name. No response. I tried again. Nothing. I was halfway to grabbing my pack to go find him when he walked back into camp, totally calm. "You radio me?" I asked. He frowned. "No. Figured you'd call if you needed anything." I told him what I heard. He shrugged it off, said maybe I picked up a ranger's channel or another group nearby. But I knew better. There was no one out here. And the voice had sounded like him. That night, while we ate, I kept thinking about the way the voice cut off, like someone pulled the plug mid-sentence. And what bothered me more was the phrasing. "You see this." Not, "Do you see this?" But, "You see this." Like it already knew I was watching. The next day, we hit a rough section of switchbacks. Cold wind, gray sky, everything felt off. About halfway up, Connor stopped walking again, same exact gesture as before. He turned to me and said, "Radio, turn it on." I did. At first, nothing but static. Then, faint and broken. "Can you hear me? Hello? Don't stop walking." The voice was mine. I looked at Connor. His face had gone pale. "That was you," he said quietly. "No," I said. "That wasn't me. I haven't touched it." We stood there, frozen, radios pressed to our ears. Then another voice came through. A whisper beneath the static. Garbled, but not ours. They're already past the tree line. I turned mine off. So did he. We didn't speak for a while after that. Just kept walking. Every shadow felt alive. Every tree looked like it was hiding something behind it. We kept glancing back down the trail, half expecting to see someone or something following us. That night, we made camp in silence. The wind had picked up, and the tent shook slightly. Around midnight, I woke up needing to piss. I unzipped the tent and stepped out, flashlight in hand. The second I stood up, my radio, which I left zipped in my pack, clicked on by itself. He's outside now. My blood ran cold. I spun around, scanning the dark. Nothing. Just trees, wind, and distant rustling. I lunged back into the tent, grabbed the radio, and smashed the power button. Connor jolted awake. "What the hell, man?" he said. I told him, word for word. He sat up slowly, didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "I think they're close." I asked him who he meant. He just looked at me and said, "I don't think they're using our voices by accident." We left camp before sunrise. Didn't eat, didn't talk. Just hiked hard, downhill, straight toward the trailhead. But the forest didn't feel right. Trails looked wrong. Familiar rocks were missing. At one point, I swear we passed the same down tree twice from opposite directions. And then, midway down the slope, my radio flared up again. This time, both of them. Connor and I froze as both radios, still clipped to our straps, lit up with voices, not just static. Actual voices. Our voices. "Where are you going?" "You're not leaving." "It's not done yet." And then something new. Another voice, deeper, slower, like it was mimicking speech. "You see now. You hear now. You stay now." We threw the radios into the woods. Ran the rest of the way down. We didn't stop until we saw the ranger station in the distance. When we finally stumbled into the parking lot, my truck was the only vehicle there. Sun was just starting to set, and I remember thinking it felt too quiet, even for a trailhead. Connor and I didn't talk much on the way home. Later that night, I opened my backpack to grab my charger. My radio was inside. I know I threw it into the woods, watched it disappear into the trees. But there it was, right where it had been the whole trip, zipped neatly into the front pouch. I pulled it out and stared at it. Then it clicked on. Just once. Still with us. I took the batteries out and smashed the thing with a hammer. Haven't touched it away since. Haven't gone backpacking, either. Connor moved to Florida 2 months later. Says he needed a change of scene. But last week, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a small handheld radio. And a note. 2 words, printed in block letters. Story 4. I've always loved finding places that feel untouched. No trail markers, no signs of other people, just raw, open nature. That's why when Riley and I stumbled across the clearing, it felt like a gift. We were 3 days into a backcountry trip in the northern Cascades. No marked trails, just topo maps and compass work. Riley had never done true off-grid hiking before, but she was a good sport about it, even when the terrain got rough. The trip was her idea, actually. She said she wanted to get away from the noise and stress of her job, and I was all for it. We found the clearing near the edge of a narrow stream, wide enough for a tent, surrounded by firs, with a mossy ridge giving us a natural windbreak. The trees were tall, the underbrush thin. Quiet, peaceful, isolated. At first, we thought we were the only ones who had ever been there. We were wrong. The first weird thing was the fire pit. It was subtle, just a ring of blackened rocks a few feet from where we pitched our tent. The stones had been carefully arranged, with charcoal still visible between them, though they were cold to the touch. It wasn't fresh, but it wasn't ancient either. Someone had used it recently enough that the moss hadn't fully grown back. "Looks like someone beat us here," I said. Riley knelt beside it. "There's no footprints, no gear, no garbage." She was right. It was too clean. No crushed grass, no wrappers, not even a broken twig. Just that perfectly silent pit, like someone had camped here, then erased themselves completely. That night, the woods were quieter than usual. Not just quiet, wrong quiet. No insects, no breeze, just stillness. Riley joked that it felt like we were inside a snow globe someone had stopped shaking. Around midnight, I woke up to a faint crunching sound outside the tent, like footsteps. I held my breath. It stopped. I didn't hear it again, but I didn't sleep either. The next morning, we found the boot. It was half buried in silt near the stream, maybe 10 yards from camp. Faded tan leather, cracked with age, laces missing. It looked like it had been there a while, but again, not long enough to be ancient. I lifted it up. Inside was packed with leaves. No bugs, no mold, just forgotten. Riley laughed nervously and said, "Okay, that's creepy." We moved camp a little farther upstream that day, just to be safe. Still within the clearing, but out of sight of the fire pit and the boot. That afternoon, while collecting kindling, I found the journal. It was under a pile of flat rocks near a tree with bark peeled away and a long vertical scar. The rocks didn't look natural. Someone had stacked them. I lifted the top one and saw the edge of a Ziploc bag poking out. The notebook inside was leather-bound, water-stained but mostly intact. The first few pages were filled with scribbled entries, no names, no dates, just fragments of sentences and descriptions. I flipped through quickly at first, then slower as something caught my eye. Took the northern ridge. She slipped once, but laughed it off. She's trusting me more. Found the stream today. Clear water. No signs of animals. Set up near the broken pine. Feels safe here. She likes the quiet. They were us. Those were our exact moments. Word for word. Riley had slipped the day before. Laughed it off. We found the stream. Set up near a snapped pine that stood like a jagged post. Everything matched. But the handwriting wasn't mine. Some entries were longer. Paranoid. Erratic. She keeps asking where we are. I lie and tell her we're close to the trailhead. She's sleeping too much. I watch her breathe. I count the seconds between each breath. Sometimes I think I hear myself in the woods. Not just echoes me. I don't know which version is real anymore. The last page was torn in half. Just 2 words remained. Don't follow. I didn't show Riley the journal. I don't know why. Maybe part of me didn't want to scare her, or maybe I was scared she'd think I wrote it. That night, she asked if I was okay. I told her I just had a headache. She curled up next to me and fell asleep quickly. I lay there for hours, staring at the tent ceiling, replaying the entries in my head. At some point I must have dozed off, because I woke to the sound of whispering. Low, hushed voices outside the tent. One was male. The other was Riley's. I turned over. She was gone. I scrambled outside barefoot, calling her name. The whispering stopped instantly. The forest was pitch black except for my headlamp beam. I found her standing by the original fire pit. She turned slowly when I approached. Her eyes were wide, unfocused. "I heard someone," she whispered. I asked what she meant. "They were calling my name," she said. "From the trees. But it wasn't you." I walked her back to the tent. She didn't sleep. Neither did I. We left before sunrise. Didn't even eat. Just packed up and started hiking hard, following our GPS back toward the main trail. It took longer than it should have. The trees looked different. Familiar turns were gone. Once, we circled back to a spot we knew we'd passed an hour earlier. Eventually, we made it out. Reached the car. No words the whole drive home. A week later, Riley broke up with me. She said something about not feeling like herself since the trip. Said she kept waking up thinking someone was in her apartment. That she'd hear me talking to her even though I wasn't there. She asked me, once, did we really find that campsite? Or were we supposed to? I never answered. The journal is still in my closet. I keep telling myself I should burn it, but I can't. Sometimes I flip through the pages again, reading the entries, trying to convince myself it was some weird coincidence. But last night, I noticed something new. At the very back, scrawled into the inside cover in smeared graphite, was a date. Next weekend. And under it, a line I know I've never seen before. She'll want to go back.